Hey everybody, what is up? Fourth Seraph here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about how Black Ops 3 will be remembered. Will it be remembered as a good or as a bad Call of Duty? I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I wanted to break it down a little bit in a video. But before the video starts, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it, and if you guys think it'll be remembered as good or bad before watching the video, go ahead and post what you think down below. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Now let's get right into it. I want to talk a little bit about kind of how it will be perceived years down the line, not just what I think about it right now. And the reason that I think those are two separate things is a good example would be Call of Duty 5, a game that was not super loved when it came out, seemed like a step backwards. Modern Warfare had already come out, and going back to the World War II genre, which was like the overplayed, every game was World War II until Modern Warfare came out pretty much, and that was like the new trendsetter, and then we went back in time to that. A lot of people didn't like it, but now it is remembered very fondly. A lot of people would put it in like their top 5 Call of Duties, maybe not for the best ones, but for their favorite ones. A lot of people love it. I know both Ali A and T Martin have talked multiple times about how much they love that game. It holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts because for most people that was the one that got them started, because a lot of the people that are in the scene now, like, that was the age they got an Xbox 360 and started playing shooting games on it. I know that was the first Call of Duty that I really got really into, so I love that game. Interestingly enough, Advanced Warfare was a game that was really loved when it came out. People are super excited about an innovative new Call of Duty, new movement features. For about 6 months, that was pretty good, and then it kind of started trending downhill. Now most people remember it as a terrible game, and I actually went back a couple weeks ago and played it for a video, and I really did have a fun time. I don't absolutely hate that game. I think it is fun. I don't think it's the best Call of Duty, but I do enjoy it. However, the public perception is that it is absolutely terrible. So let's talk a little bit about Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3, when it came out, was a lot of hype around it because it took that movement system and seemed like it would make it much, much better and make it actually really good and a great Call of Duty. It was pretty balanced when it came out as well. The score streaks were all fairly balanced, the guns were all fairly balanced, and it seemed like it had a bright future. There were no maps that people just absolutely hated playing on. They all seemed to work pretty well. However, I don't think that any of these things necessarily mean that it'll be remembered well. It is actually my personal opinion that Black Ops 3 will be remembered as one of the worst Call of Duties ever. And let me give you a couple reasons for that. While Black Ops 3 doesn't have any maps that I would say are absolutely terrible, I think it might have the weakest map set of any game besides Call of Duty Ghosts. But I think maybe more people will even remember the maps in Call of Duty Ghosts because a lot of them were downright terrible. People absolutely hated some of the maps in this game and thus remember them. Almost every single map in Black Ops 3 decided to be a very medium-sized map. They tried to kind of just play it safe. They didn't want to go anything too small or anything too large, and I think it made a lot of forgettability in them. None of them are really that unique, that standout-ish. I guess probably my favorite map would be either Hunted or Combine. Now, Combine is the smallest map that's not a remake. We'll get into those in a second. But it doesn't really play like a small map necessarily. The playstyle on Combine is very odd. It requires a wall run on one side, so it's really not a 3-lane system. It's only a 2-lane system, which doesn't really work super well. The building layouts are a little odd, and the spawns I don't think are very good. It seems like sometimes they're just so easy to flip that people are just spawning in random places and you're getting flanked, and you are kind of forced to just run around the map like crazy. It almost makes every single game mode feel like free-for-all. You never really can predict exactly where people are going to come from. And while I've had some games where I've done incredibly good on Combine, I've had some games where people will just spawn right next to where I am standing on my team's spawn side, and it will be an enemy, and I will just immediately get shot with no ability to predict that or prepare. So I don't think any of the maps are super memorable that were released initially. And The DLC, I think, for this game has been some of the weakest DLC. Now, it does have a few things going for it in that we did get Raid and Skyjacked. Those are two maps that are very, very good. However, a game is not going to be remembered for the maps that it remade, especially since it didn't even get all of them right. The first map pack besides Skyjacked is not a very good map pack. All of the maps are pretty forgettable. They're pretty boring. I never really wish that they got pulled up more. They're just kind of there. And DLC, the maps are never as prominent as the initial release maps, and so they really do have to be good in order to make them memorable. And besides Skyjacked, really none of them are. I don't even know if I could name any of the DLC 1 maps anymore, like off the top of my head, without doing any type of research or anything like that, because they're just kind of there. And then with DLC 2, they didn't really have anything good. They messed up on the Verge map big time. It completely plays different. I actually went back and played Bonsai with some friends in Call of Duty 5, and it's not even the same map. It plays so differently. It literally is a different map. It's supposed to be this fight along the bridge with long lines of sight, and they made it just this wall run, like flank spot. It's so easy to get around. They took out a lot of the houses and shelter you could go in, and honestly, it was supposed to be a sniping map, and I think that is one of the worst maps for sniping in the entire game. It's way too easy to get flanked because people can just come from about anywhere. They can get across the outside of the bridge in like half a second, or just around on either side. It really is not, in my opinion, a good map at all. They totally messed that up, which really sucks because, like you guys know, I wanted it to be good because I love COD 5. All the other maps were just pretty forgettable. They kind of just make maps around cool thrust jumping and wall running spots, and like Knockout has that cool big jump you can do. That's like the worst way you can take, 'cause if there's a person there, you are so dead if you get caught in the air, because they automatically have an advantage over you unless you're playing on like PC or you have a SCUF controller and you can jump and aim at the same time. But other than that, you're pretty much screwed in any of those spots, and so it makes the maps pretty weak because you aren't going to be in fair gunfights as often because you're forced to use the new movement system a lot, and it just, none of the maps were that great. Now, DLC 3, I think, has been the best DLC. Obviously, the Raid remake is good, and Berserk is very fun, but the other maps are pretty forgettable. Now, the problem with them remaking maps is that is really one less map that is that game can take credit for, and creates more possibility for forgetfulness because they essentially lose out on 4 maps that could be the really memorable ones from that game. Not only that, the main thing is that the pay-to-win system. Now, the new weapons they've introduced through supply drops, people always try and come out and say it's not pay-to-win, and in one sense it isn't, and in one sense it is. Now, it's not pay to win in the sense that if you have the DLC weapons, you will win every game. But it is pay to win in the sense that in a one-on-one gunfight, many of the DLC weapons are unfair. The crossbow is probably the lowest skill cap weapon I have ever seen in a Call of Duty. It's super easy to just spam, it's a one-hit kill, and it takes almost no skill at all to use. If you use like dual crossbows, you can just fire off shots, and you are almost guaranteed to get 1 or 2 kills per life. Now, you're not going to necessarily capture a lot of points, you're not necessarily going to do anything to help your team or to win a game, but what you do is help get a lot of easy kills that really take no skill. Same thing for something like the Marshal, the Banshee, if you're trying to take out score streaks, or you can kind of just fire it off randomly at busy areas, and you will probably be able to get a few kills out of it. And some of the other weapons as well, using the melee weapons, you can kind of just go to cheap spots and get a few kills each life, but not help your team. And so not only has it unbalanced the game in that if you have a lot of people trying to use melee weapons on your team, you have a much lower potential to win, But if you use those cheap weapons, you're almost guaranteed to just get a lot of kills in a game. But you won't help your team necessarily with that. And if you guys want more on that info, check out my video entirely devoted to melee weapons where I go in depth on it and talk about the problems with it. This is all I'm going to say in that video, is that Black Ops 3 is probably one of the most unbalanced Call of Duties ever at this point because of all the weapons that they have introduced. They've completely screwed themselves over because of the pay-to-win system. Now, also the contracts. These aren't something that are necessarily bad, but the problem is that they're not good, and they've left a bad taste in almost everyone's mouth because people were hoping for something to come to Black Ops 3 and to save it and to make it great again, and unfortunately they introduced probably the weakest update ever. You get one weekly contract, which basically doesn't require you to do anything except just kind of play, and a daily contract, which is pretty much the same thing. You pretty much just get a couple extra crypto keys per week. You might get an extra couple supply drops a week out of it, but it doesn't add anything to the game. All it does is attempt and fail to fix the problem with the supply drops and the black market. Now, especially because of the other games that are coming out around this time, namely, I would say Overwatch, a game that doesn't have pay to win. All DLC is always free. The only thing in-game you can buy are aesthetic items, and it is extremely balanced. Not only that, but constantly updated to make it more fair and more fun. Blizzard does a good job of making their community feel as if they care, where the Call of Duty community feels like Activision has just been giving them the finger for the last year. So, in my opinion, Black Ops 3 is not headed on a good course. Unless they really do something major to turn it around, which maybe the mod tools will be able to, it might be remembered as one of the worst Call of Duties ever. From the boring, forgettable maps, to the completely unbalanced pay-to-win weapons, the terrible black market supply drop system, and its competition that is quite frankly stealing a lot of players. My ratio of Overwatch to Call of Duty playtime is continually going in Overwatch's favor. I now mainly just play Call of Duty for streams and for videos. I don't really enjoy the game knowing that I could be playing something that is quite a bit better. And it's just going to be more fun. It's not going to be just getting stabbed in the back randomly by some guy with a melee weapon that only is going to get 4 kills in a game. It's not going to be just running out in the open and getting randomly shot down by a guy spamming crossbow arrows. It's not going to be anything like that. It is going to be actually fun and actually skill-based. And for a long time, the Call of Duty community was a very skill-based community. That was the draw of the game, and Black Ops 3 has not done well with making a skill-based game. Treyarch honestly kind of failed at keeping it that way. And so that's kind of my thoughts on this. I didn't want to be like super negative, which I know the video kind of pointed out a lot of negatives. Hopefully it did point out some of the things that they did right initially, but I did want to kind of talk about this because I've been thinking about it a lot recently. But like I said, comment down below and tell me what you guys think, because I would be very curious to know. Anyways, guys, until next time, I will see you online.